Back in September 2013, I happened to search YouTube for videos of model railways and was struck by how much N-gauge models had improved since I was last interested in the hobby decades before. So I tried my hand at making these little cottages from card. Not a total success, but good enough to encourage me to try again, this time using plasticard. But what to model? I thought of Finchingfield in Essex, and I started with this cottage. Estimating the size of the building from Google Maps, I used Photoshop to draw the outlines of the walls and the positions of the doors and windows. I made a print and folded up the result to see if it looked okay. I printed again, this time onto self-adhesive paper, which I stuck to a piece of plasticard. I cut out the walls with a scalpel, following the printed lines before removing the sticky paper. I cheat a bit with the windows. They're printed, and the result is placed behind the glazing, hardly noticeable in this scale. The roof was covered with a tile paper derived from photos of buildings at Finchingfield. I extend the walls below ground level, a la Pendon, and here the cottage sits in a foam board base. Next came these buildings, one of them showing its brickwork. This was derived from a photo of the real thing. We're on a hill, and this pub was made next. It looks distinctly odd like this, though putting it into a base gives a better idea of how it will look when installed. The addition of a small shop completes the group, and here's how they look on the layout. On the other side of the road is the 16th century Guildhall. The real building is listed Grade 1. This next one finished up well away from the others so far built. Before assembly, I photographed the walls, sitting on a print of the windows. It needed some minor modifications before installation, as it finished up on a rather gentler slope than originally planned. Although the fronts of the buildings can be modelled fairly accurately, the backs have to be done from imagination. Returning to the buildings, to the left of that first cottage, comes this little one, and then a group of several more. After all those tiny buildings, it was back to a larger project. It's next to the Guildhall on the layout, and I call it the Vicarage. It's not in real life, though. After 10 months' work on the buildings, it was now time to start constructing a baseboard. Fine weather meant it was possible to build it in the garden. I wanted to store a bed lengthwise under the layout, so first I constructed a base, the parts of which are all bolted together. This substructure eliminates the need for legs or trestles underneath the baseboard joints. The side beams consist of 2 lengths of 9mm ply, spaced apart by square blocks and forming sockets at the ends into which the legs fit. The baseboards themselves are also 9mm ply, the parts cut out with a router. This is one of the end boards fully assembled. With the 3 boards made, I tried a test assembly indoors before taking them back into the garden to add the tops. The boards have short legs which fit into the side beams of the base. A couple of alignment dowels were fitted and bolt holes drilled to hold the baseboards together. From July to September 2014, I laid much of the track, gluing it to 1/8 thick cork. I made a couple of Metcalfe kits as temporary station buildings and a goodshed. I even used the other buildings that I'd made and some small boxes to get a feel for how the village might be laid out. The track is Pico Code 55. Every piece is wired to the common busbars of the DCC system. The electro-frog points are operated by cobalt motors, and I cut away a lot of unneeded plastic around the tie bars. The ballast is a mix of Woodland Scenics buff and brown, fixed down with their scenic cement. As a break for working on the track, I started making some trees. Twisted wire covered with a mix of polyfiller, PVA glue, acrylic paint and water forms the trunk and branches, which are then covered with Woodland Scenics coarse grass. Making the station building took a couple of months. These were the first structures I made using the Silhouette portrait cutting machine. It made accurately cutting the parts of the canopy on the roadside very easy. The platforms were built up with plasticard, covered with paper to hide the joins. The smaller buildings were added, as were the platform walls. The new cutting machine was also used to cut the components of the footbridge, also made with plasticard. Running inboards, lampposts, platform furniture and people were added, and Wrenton station was more or less complete. 2015 saw the fiddle yard installed, and the largest building on the layout, the church, was constructed. I've done videos about both the yard and the church, and you'll also find one with more details about my method of making buildings.